Hey there, so today I am going to build a roof rack for my kayak. I drive a Chevy Bolt, and if any of you is familiar with that car, it doesn't have many choices as to stock roof racks. Chevrolet has a few endorsed aftermarket roof racks that you can buy for a really high amount of money. We're talking $500, $600, $700. So I'm going to just do a simple roof rack utilizing the 4 or 8 bolt holes that exist in the roof rails. I'm just going to use some simple black iron pipe and some mild steel bracketry that I have to make. So let me show you where I've started, and then I will carry on demonstrating and documenting what's going on. So here we have brackets in the process of being made. I've got them laid out with a Sharpie. This is just basic mild steel that I got from the local steel store. It's 4 inches wide, 3.5 inches wide, by 1/4 of an inch thick. I've got my holes, my locations marked out for where the holes will be so that they line up with the holes that exist in the rails. This is the last one that I'm cutting. The first ones all look like that, and that's just some notes from something else. They'll look something like that. They'll be notched out for a piece of about 1 inch black iron pipe that will form the crossbars. And the way it'll be is it'll be offset so you can rotate it front to back and either move the rails close together or farther apart. This should serve as a sufficient way to put the kayak on the roof of my car. I'm also going to put some bungee or tie down loops in it so that you can just hook a strap to it and tie it over. And I may add the threaded bars so that I can extend the ends out and actually get more than one kayak on there. And that's the plan this far, and I will carry on building it. Let me cut this last piece. Okay, so here I have my 4 what will become brackets, and I actually managed to get them all to be roughly the same size, which is fantastic. So now I'm going to design my offset shape that allows me to mount the bar. I'll be welding the bar to the top roughly right there, and it'll be one on each end with a little bit sticking out for the threaded black iron pipe, and it should work great for a rack, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to mount a roof box to it or a roof basket or what have you. So I'm going to lay these out. So because I'm using 1 inch black iron pipe to make the crossbars, I'm going to draw out a 1 inch circle on a piece of paper, and then I'm going to lay out my pattern based on that 1 inch circle. So there's 1 inch, or a 1/2 inch radius equals a 1 inch circle. So now I just found a piece of cardstock in the basement. Draw my 1 inch circle, so that'll be the diameter of my black pipe. You know what, let's use a real ruler for this operation here, a real scale. So then I bisect the circle, and that will be the top of my, that's a very dull pencil, that will be the top of my bracket right there. So it'll have, you know, half a circle in it, and I'll just connect the lines to make it straight. And maybe I'll go sharpen my pencil. So now I have a reference point on which to lay my what will be my bracket. And so you have to make sure and add and leave a little space at the front so that when you weld when you put something in there, there's some strength at the front. And now I'm just going to trace out the bracket like that, and then there we have our I don't know if you can see that in the image, but there's where our spot for the crossbar will be, and then now we'll design out the rest of it. And it should be something, and of course you leave a little bit at the back as well, and it'll be something like maybe like that, with a hole in it. Nice big hole right there, probably a nice actual even hole drilled with like a 3/8 or 1/2 inch drill bit, so you have a place to hook a strap to. And that'll be the pattern. Let me cut that out and we'll start transferring it to the brackets. I think that'll work well. Cool. Just like that. So my next step has been to cut out the 1-inch diameter half circle, or it's a 1/2 inch radius in here that I can transfer to my panel, and then I've marked my hole location for the tie down point. So now I'm going to lay this back on here as best and as accurately as possible, like that. And I use a little punch, a little automatic punch, to locate the hole that's going to be there, which once you find the spot is as simple as doing that, and it leaves a little dimple that I can drill at. And you probably can't see that, but there it is. And it also helps me to locate my template again. If I can find the dimple. There it is. And now I'll trace in my half circle. Like that, and that is the final pattern. Half circle there, dimple there for the tie down point, which will end up being a 1/2 inch circle, and this will be trimmed out to make it look pretty. So the next step in this highly questionable process is to actually cut all this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my right angle grinder with a cutting wheel on it to cut this out not quite to my line, and then I will change this wheel out to a grinding wheel so that I can grind down to my final size. So here we go. Now to do that 4 more times. That's going to be fun, huh? Well, I'll get back to you when it's all said and done. So I discovered that I could use a jigsaw to cut those out. So I switched over to a jigsaw with what may or may not have been an actual metal cutting blade, but I did it and it worked. So now the next step is to grind them down to the line. So we'll get after it. Okay, so the next step is going to be to clamp all the pieces together thusly, or I'm going to drill a hole right here that it's 233 thousandths in diameter, which is slightly larger than the screw that I need to put into the nut plate that's on the rack. So I'm going to drill it right there. We'll put here's the bit. We'll put the fastener through there and make sure it fits. Okay, so I drilled a hole in my material, and it is slightly larger than the fastener that I want to use, but just in case, and to give myself a little ease of installation for the rack in the future, I'm going to drill the second hole right there a little bit bigger, like maybe 5/16 diameter, and that'll allow me to line the small hole up and put in the fastener in the bigger hole without any trouble, without any struggle. I've measured the holes in the car. They're for exactly 4 3/4 of an inch apart, so I'm going to drill a 5/16 hole at this other location that is 4 3/4 of an inch away from the first hole. Alright, hole number 2. Here we have a 5/16 drill bit, which is slightly larger than this quarter bit. Well, it's almost 1/4 of an inch that I used for the original hole, and you can see that the bolt that I've chosen fits right through there nicely, and hopefully we'll be able to test fit these really soon. So there we have our finished product. One slightly smaller hole, one slightly larger hole to allow for human inaccuracy, we'll call it. The only thing left to do is to test fit it. Well, they line up. The holes are what I wanted them to be. The front one's a little loose, just like I wanted it to be. The back one's pretty tight, and our rods will be right there. So I'm going to put this on the back there, and see if it'll clear my funny little aerodynamic antenna thing that Chevrolet has decided is the way to go these days. Hopefully it will, because I'm going to have to make these brackets taller if it doesn't fit. So, fingers crossed. That's what they look like. These screws obviously aren't the ones, but they will do for the time being. These inserts are a little rusty. Makes it difficult to finger thread them. But anyway, that's the height right there, and I actually think that's going to work. Let me get a tape measure. I got a tape measure. So the height of the fin is almost 2 3/4 inches. It looks like we're pretty close to the same height. Plus, this bracket is ahead of the fin, so when it's all said and done, I can just make sure that nothing actually hits the fin. So I'm going to go with this and do a little happy dance. Next thing is I'm going to put the tie down holes in it. I'll go back to the same routine where I clamp it together and drill all 4 holes at the same time. Nice, and I'm going to drill 2 holes, one there and one about there, or there, and then connect them together with the jigsaw. Oh, and I had to put in a different bit. I'm going to use this big fat bit to drill a big fat hole. Okay, there we have our 2 holes thing that didn't land on my foot. There we have our two holes, and I'm just going to take my jigsaw and connect them together, but unfortunately, because of the wobbliness of this, they don't all exactly line up when you stack them, but you'll never know when they're separated. So let me take a second, clean these off. And just like before when I was clamping these down, just cut this center bit out so that there's a nice big hole for hook straps or whatever if I need them. So we'll use the jigsaw and a bimetal blade. And there you have one. A little hole. I'm going to file them out so that they look pretty. Alright, so this is going to be another situation in which we clamp these all together and do them all at the same time, because it occurred to me that these pieces have to be at least somewhat identical so that the thing will bolt up to the car, because if I do these individually and they're not exactly the same, then the holes won't line up. So we're going to try to make that happen. As you can see, they're not all exactly the same size, but if I reference everything from the same point, they should all line up. So what I'm going to do is I already cut this one a bit. I hogged out the main part. So I think I'm going to do exactly the same thing, only they'll be stacked together so everything gets done at the same time. We'll clamp this up right here. I'll reorient the cameras and we'll get cracking. Okay, here we are again. I'm going to clamp this down right here, and I'm just going to hog this out, and then I'm going to use that same trick with the rotary file to I'll put a bigger wheel on there and try to hog it all the rest of the way out. Actually, you know what? Let's cut acrossways here. Alright. That did the trick. Now we'll change out this cutter, this grinder, and try to get the rest of that out of there, and then do a final scrub with the file. Okay, so I have my brackets made. Found some screws that will suffice for now. We're going to head out to the car, bolt these brackets on, and set the pipe on that's going to be the crossbar and see how she looks. Then it comes down to welding. So here we go. Oh, I'll be. Look at that. It's a roof rack. Might look a little silly, but it didn't cost $700. So today we're going to put the thing together. I'm going to bolt these brackets on, and we're going to lay the tubes on there, and we're going to weld it up. I have some reservation about using a high-powered electric welding device around my electric car, but the only way to ensure that everything's going to fit right is to actually put it on the car and tack it up. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do my best to protect the paint and protect the car, and we'll get her welded up, and then once that happens we'll have a roof rack. So after I actually went to the hardware store and bought all the hardware for the roof rack, I now know that these fasteners are M6 fasteners. In order to weld these, I have to clean the black pipe. I hope that I can get a good shiny clean on the black pipe and on these. These are pretty clean from being built, but I'm going to have to lay these on here, measure out where the spacing is for it to be centered, and then clean the spots where the welds are going to be. Cleaned up so that you can weld it and it will be a solid weld. It's always important to clean all the junk off your material before you weld. I know that welders will know that, but those of us who don't weld as often or are learning to weld may not know that. My welder conveniently uses the same power that my car charger uses, so I don't have to do anything special to have a 240 volt welder around my house. So I'm going to wrap this towel around my weld, hopefully not catch the towel on fire, so that it doesn't burn the paint on my car. We're just going to tack it. We're just going to put a little tack on there so that it stays put and I can take it off the car and finish the weld. Yep, burned the towel a little bit. Didn't burn the car though. Okay, and now because of the short nature of my welding cables, I have to turn the car around. And there we have it. They're actually welded on there well enough that they can probably live like that, but we're not going to let them. So I'm going to take my cold chisel that I have and knock all these little bitty splatters off, try to clean it up a little bit, and then, like I said, I'm going to put a self-etching primer on there, and then I'm going to paint the whole thing black. I considered painting it blue to match the car, but I don't think that's cool. Well, maybe it's kind of cool, but it's going to get damaged through use, so black is the color. There's some more of those little splatters that I was talking about. You can see those there, but we're going to knock those off so that it looks smoother and cleaner. Looks like I got a little soot in there I got to brush out. That's the plan. Okay, so it's time for the black paint. So it's all done. Last night we finished painting and got all the welds done, and I went and took it and mounted it on the car. And the funny thing I learned is that after doing the final welds on the rear crossbar, it actually altered the angle of the brackets just a tiny bit, not enough to affect the fit of it. It still fits, but it's a little tighter than it was when we first built it. But it's on the car. I put some little white tape ends on the ends of the bar so that in the event someone is walking really close to my car, they'll hopefully see them and not bonk their face on them. And yeah, it looks like it's starting to rain, but I'm going to go out there and you can take a look at it anyway. I will put our luggage box on top just for demonstration purposes and maybe take some pictures and add them to this video. But at this point, that's what it looks like. And it's super solid. I have no doubt that it will hold whatever I put on it. I think the failure point will be the rails that are attached to the car, because those are plastic, the finished product. I thought I'd make a clip of the final product. It's a boat that is almost, or maybe it in fact is, as big as my car, but it sits up there.